So I got 5 categories here. Some of them, 2 of them are pretty easy to understand, and you're used to seeing them: bloom time and size. And then we have reproduction, their main reproduction method. Doesn't mean this is the only way they reproduce. So is it seed or by roots, by rhizome? And then our competitiveness level. Remember, 1 is a behaved clumper. 4 is I'm going to take over this garden in the next 3 years and you can't do anything about it. Longevity. This is sort of a shot in the dark for me. I'm just thinking about my experience with plants in several gardens I've designed. How long can we expect them to thrive and do well? As far as thinking about the mother plant, the main plant, before they spread and self-seed, how long can we expect them to remain in the landscape? So look at my asterisk there on the bottom. A variety of site, ecoregion, plant community, and climatic variables do not make these numbers hard and fast at all, right? They are just guidelines to provide a general sense of plant behavior to help you think about design from a plant's perspective or a plant's behavioral perspective. All right, here's our list, right? So generally, the smaller the space, the smaller the species list should be. And the more you may want to depend on massing to show design attention. Less is always more. Don't appear too needy in your garden landscape, right? Don't call that person you're attracted to every 3 hours and leave them a voicemail. Sort of the same thing here. Less is more for sure. You also want to avoid aggressive species and those that get tall and could flop over, especially in more pampered garden conditions. Plants behave the best when they are placed in dense communities where competition is keen. We want plant competition. We do not want plants marooned a foot or 2 away from one another in an ocean of mulch. We want them touching, we want them communicating, we want them loving each other, we want them fighting each other. Look for consistent heights in your landscape. This is just a lot of people are a little squeamish about this idea, but when you have a consistent height in your landscape, especially if it's below eye height of most human beings, then it's going to be seen as more intentional and more acceptable aesthetically to your neighbors who might otherwise, be trying to be thinking, "Wow, this is way too crazy of a space. I am calling weed control 5 minutes ago." And perennials are the simplest plants to start with, right? They're going to tend to be longer lived. Just a safe bet, and won't make you feel like you're a failure so much. Nobody's a failure when you're gardening. You are a superhero when you're gardening with native plants for wildlife and a natural design. I hug you from a distance. So some assumptions about the garden we're creating today with these most common native plants for sale at big box nurseries. Your space is about 100-200 square feet. It's a clay loam soil and it's mostly sunny, which means it's going to be moist in the spring and fall, but can dry out in summer for a long period, several weeks, maybe a month or so. And this may be an island bed or a foundation bed. Okay, so here's that plant list again. We need to trim it down. This is too many plants, and you know what? They're not all going to work, especially if this is a small front yard space where we're also trying to appease our neighbors. So what can we take out of here? Easy. Augustaki funiculum is going to go. It self-sows around too much. It might get too tall. Amsonia eubrictii is just going to be too big. Asclepias incarnata maybe a little bit too tall and isn't going to live long enough for us. Baptisia australis, definitely too big. And I'm impatient anyway. That one takes too long to establish. Let's see, Eutrochium purpureum, too big. It's going to be too wide and way too tall. Maybe okay in a backyard situation, especially if the space is larger. Monarda fistulosa, it's a little open, it's a little area, it sows around a little bit, it spreads by roots a little bit, but its damning feature for us today in this landscape that we're doing is that it's an early successional species. It's only going to be around for a few years. We don't want it too tall, doesn't last long enough. Panicum virgatum, too tall. Ratibida pinnata, just like Monarda fistulosa, it's too tall. It's an early successional species, and boy, is this thing going to flop around all over the place. It's just going to do that in a garden of this size with the plant species that we're looking at today, so we can't have it. Another plant that's going to do that, Symphyotrichum, the New England aster, it's got to go. People plant, it's a great plant. It's a wonderful plant. Love the flowers. Love the fact that it's supporting caterpillars on its leaves. yeah, it's doing so many wonderful things, but it will grow way too tall in almost every garden setting and flop over like crazy. And that's some of the reasons, again, that these plants flop over is because people are not using enough plants, they're not planted closely together, and they're overwatering or over-fertilizing the garden space. So there you go. I have probably dashed some of your hearts, some of your hopes. But yeah, so we have trimmed that list down.